Okay, I'm going to make this quick. I've been working on this snowmobile here, which is identical to the 500X CSP, and the power valves. To clean the power valves, what you do is these are two 10mm bolts, and you just unscrew those. This whole valve comes straight out, and this is going to be all gooey and gummy. It should come straight out without any trouble. You might get the gasket. You can see the gasket is on this end. Sometimes it'll stick to that. What you don't want to happen is to have it stick halfway on one, halfway on the other, and then pull it out. You don't want to rip that gasket. They are a couple bucks, so it's not a big deal, but you don't want to put it back in with a gasket that's been damaged. In this case, the gasket is in good shape. What I want to do is look to make sure there isn't a lot of blow-by around the seal here, and I want to clean this. What I use to clean it is steel wool and any kind of degreaser. I used Hoppy's number 9 to do that, but I used some steel wool. Now this has got some goo on it, and that's because there's goo inside here. When you put this back on, you might say, how do I put this back on? If you put it back on one way, it doesn't go in all the way. If you put it the other way, it will go in farther, but then there's spring tension, and you just basically bolt it down, get it tight. I believe there's a torque spec for that, but it's not too critical. It just needs to be snug. Okay. Then for greasing, there's a couple of key parts to grease, and I have the airbox off, so it's really easy to see here, but most of the time it's not. When you first open the hood, you take off the belt shield or move that aside, and there's two grease zerks. There's one right here. This, I've got like an overabundance of grease. I really need to clean that up. Not a huge deal if you get extra grease, but you want to grease that. Now to get that grease zerk, a lot of times what you got to do, there's a bolt right here. You unbolt that. It's not difficult to do. Again, very light torque specs. I don't remember what that is, but it's not super tight. You unbolt that, and this whole thing will slide this way. Most of the time, you can slide it out without doing anything else. This belt is pretty snug here, but I don't recall if I did this already, and I don't recall if I had to undo the belt or not. But be very careful. Inside of here are a bunch of washers, and you want to make sure that those are spacers. And you want to make sure they go in the same way. So if there's spacers, there's some of those washers back here and some of them here, and you want to make sure you have the right amount on both sides. The other thing is there's a key in here. So there's a metal stick, basically, that keeps this locked into the shaft. And what you want to make sure is that key, if this slides out far enough, that key will fall off. It's like I said, it's maybe an inch long, and it's maybe a 1/4 inch, maybe less, square. It's a square rod, basically, and you want to make sure that wherever that, you don't, just kind of check down in there and make sure it didn't get dropped down in there. And when you put this all back together, this should lock right in with the shaft. Okay, down below that, there's another one, and you can't see it very well, but you can feel it. If you get your hand down in here, you can feel there's another grease zerk underneath there, and you want to grease that too. These are two bearings that will leave you stranded if they give out. Just about any other bearing or bushing or whatever, you can limp back home if you need to. But these two, if these two fail, you're dead in the water. You're not going anywhere. You're going to have to get towed out. So you want to make sure you take good care of these bearings and grease them really good. That's why you see a lot of extra grease here, because it's a lot better to have too much grease than not enough. Okay. Then other grease parts. There's a grease zerk here. This is another grease zerk here that you want to do. And then underneath the suspension, just about everywhere you see a bolt, there's probably a grease zerk. In this case, there isn't one there, but check each one of those. Here's another pivot point right here, and there should be a grease zerk someplace. I don't feel one, but there's got to be one there someplace. Anyway, check all those. Also check underneath. If you get underneath here, oh, this is gonna be tough. Right underneath here is a is a post that goes all the way through the tunnel. Okay, it goes through here. So there's a rod there. There's going to be a grease zerk. You want to hit each one of those grease zerks. The other thing you want to do down here is just spin these to make sure that they spin and that there's really not a lot of wobble. You just want to give these, now see, this one's got a bit of a wobble to it, but it's smooth. So it's probably okay for this year. But you want to make sure that any of those get replaced. Now here's a wheel here, and you're not going to get, because there's pressure on it. I've got the track up off the ground, so that's why there's no pressure on these. Normally there's pressure on these, and any of these that have pressure on them, you're really not going to be able to tell, other than just grab a hold of it and wobble it, wiggle it, and if they wiggle, then that's important to know. Again, if they're smooth, that's okay, but if they start to get rough, these what you'll end up happening is these will fail. So the bearing basically will fail, and the wheel will just kind of wobble there, and it won't be any good. If one of these fails for any reason, the same thing goes for the back here. If you get one of these that will fail, it's okay. You can limp home. But you get more than one, then you're toast. But one of these gone bad, you can get home. So these are okay. You want to check these, but really the ones you want to take good care of are the ones that have the grease zerks on them. Okay, so just check all those. Make sure you got grease anywhere there's a grease zerk. Get some grease in there, and basically I just grease them until the grease comes out. So until I start seeing grease, I just keep pumping it in there. And with these, because it's really hard to see in there, that's why you end up with all this grease in here. Again, the air box is off, so you can actually see this. I couldn't see it. When I greased this, the air box was in, and I didn't see any of this. I just saw some grease coming out here, and then I knew that I was in good shape. So those are the main things you want to check and grease. This is probably the toughest part, although otherwise all this stuff is just grease, just grease fittings and stuff. So everything else should be okay. These, you just want to do these quick, and then these grease fittings take you, less than an hour. You can have all this thing be ready to back in business for winter. All right, a couple more maintenance items here on this side of the snowmobile. The one thing I forgot to mention about the exhaust valves is you don't want to spin those. They do not spin. There's a rubber bellows in there, and you will tear the rubber bellows if you spin it. It's meant to go either forward or back and not spin around. So don't spin them. Okay, so a couple things over here. First thing is the chain case. So the chain case over here, there's a yellow knob down in here. This is a dipstick. Pull that out, and there's a magnet on the end. And you can see I've actually got good. It's up to the second line there is where the fluid is. But you can see down below, there's actually a magnet on the end, and the magnet has collected some goo. It looks like really dirty oil or whatever. What those are the little tiny metal shavings, and it's pretty normal for a chain case to accumulate that stuff. Now, what you want to do is every few years, maybe a couple thousand miles or 3,000 miles, you want to change that oil in there. If it happens to be low, the only way to add oil is to put it in that hole. So you need a nice long funnel, and then Polaris makes chain case oil that you put in there. The thing you want to do here is when you get this goo on here, you want to wipe that off and then stick it down in there. And I don't know, you could probably, I've already wiped this off, and you can see that it pulled out some more stuff. So I'll probably wipe this off again, but it's nothing to worry about. This stuff happens. And like I said, every few years you probably want to take the chain case cover off and drain that. But it's nothing to really be too concerned about it. I would say, like I said, 2,000 to 3,000 miles probably. I don't care, whatever the manual says. Okay, a couple more things to check. On this side, you want to make sure that the coolant level is between the lines here. You want to check that coolant. There's a on the top. It's a two position. So the first position, it comes up to a stop. The reason it does that is because if you ever tried to do this while the engine was hot, that would stop the cap from blowing off, and then you get your face full of scalding hot liquid. But it goes one and then push down, and then it'll go the rest of the way and it'll come out. This is a pressurized cap, and you want to make sure, there again, if you ever find yourself losing antifreeze and you look down in the engine compartment and there's antifreeze down in here, it's probably because this cap, the spring tension or the seal has gone bad and you just need to get a new one. They're pretty easy to come by. Okay, so again, and make sure that it goes back on straight, and then you go the 2 steps. Okay, make sure you have plenty of oil. There is no stabilizer or anything for the oil. You can put as much as oil in here as you want. You can leave it there forever. So I always make sure I start the season with a full thing of oil. I do not start the season with a full tank of gas. Never put summer gas in a snowmobile. Always wait. So if you end up putting a snowmobile away with an empty tank, either put it away with a full tank and fuel stabilizer like Stable, or leave it empty and make sure to fill it up only before you're ready to ride. You want to go get gas before you're ready to ride. Okay, so there's that. There's this. Oh, and one final thing. The battery needs to be charged. So the battery will lose voltage over the summer just in storage, and you want to charge it. When you charge it, only charge it with a 2 amp or less charger. A 1 to 2 amp charger. So basically a trickle charger or a maintenance charger is all you want to use in these little teeny tiny batteries. If you go more than that, you'll ruin them. Trust me, I know. The other thing about them is you don't want to leave it on there forever. If it's already got charge, if it was put away as a good, there's plenty of voltage, then charge it. If you charge it for an hour at 2 amps, you'd be fine. So you don't want to charge it for very long, but you do want to charge that. Otherwise, you'll end up going to use it and it'll be dead. Okay, so those are the things to check. Chain case, just make sure you got plenty of fluid in there. Antifreeze, make sure you got plenty of fluid. If you find yourself losing antifreeze, that's a telltale sign that there's something going on, and you want to make sure that that gets taken care of. Fill the oil before you're ready to start the season. Do not fill the gas until you're ready to go, because the blends of the gasoline will change dramatically, and the performance of the snowmobile will suck terribly if you try to put summer gas in a snowmobile and then run it in the wintertime. So you don't want to do that. And the battery, charge the battery. All right.